In this video, we are going to use matrices to solve a system of linear equations. So the first thing you have to do is to take your system and put it into an augmented matrix. So remember, I'm just taking the coefficients. So there's a 1 in front of my x, a 7 in front of my y, and then your constant goes on the right-hand side of the line. And then on the bottom equation, I have a 1 in front of x, I have a 6 in front of y, and my constant is a 0. Now, it's a good idea to think about your goal for what we want in the end, and that is we need a 1 in the top left, and then we're going to want to get a 0 below it, and then a 1 in the bottom right, and a 0 above that. And once we reach that goal, then your value of x and your value of y will be sitting on the right-hand side of the matrix. So as I look at this particular matrix, notice that I already have a 1 in the top right-hand corner, which would be my first step. So that's already done for me. Step 2 says I want to get a 0 below it. And what I want you to do, anytime you think of zeros, I want you to think of the word opposite. And notice that the O in opposite looks like a 0. So wherever it is you need the 0, ask yourself what's the opposite of that number. So the opposite of positive 1 would be negative 1. And in this case, you're going to multiply row 1 by that number and add it to the row you're changing. So we're taking negative 1 times row 1, and we're going to add it to the row where we need the 0. All right, so negative 1 times 1 is negative 1. And again, I'm going to write the numbers next to where I'm going to add them in just a second. Negative 1 times 7 is negative 7. And negative 1 times 1 is negative 1. So if I go to a new matrix, now I'm going to add these up. 1 plus negative 1, there's the 0 I wanted. 6 plus negative 7 is negative 1. And 0 plus negative 1 is negative 1. Now row 1 did not change permanently in this step, so I bring it down as it originally was. And so at this point, step 2 is now finished. Your third step is to get the 1 in the bottom right there, and I'm looking at that number right there. So when I think of 1s, I want you to think of the word reciprocal, and notice that reciprocal ends in an L, which looks like a 1, so that'll kind of help you remember what to do. So wherever you're needing to get a 1, you want to take the reciprocal of that number. And the reciprocal of this negative 1 would be 1 over negative 1. And 1 over negative 1 is still just negative 1. So we're going to multiply negative 1 times row 2 and replace row 2. Anytime we're getting the 1s, you're just going straight to the row to multiply. It's like, I think of it as a one shot. Okay, the number 1, it's a one shot, straight to the row. So in this case, I can just go record my answers in a new matrix. Negative 1 times 0 is 0. Negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1. Negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1. Again, row 1 did not change during this process, so I bring it straight down into the new matrix. Okay, so now, let's go back to green. Your fourth and final step is going to be to get a 0 where we have a 7. And again, when we think of zeros, we want to think of opposites. So the opposite of 7 would be negative 7. We're going to have to multiply row 2 by negative 7 and add it to the top row in order to get a 0 where we need it. And then we replace it in that top row. So negative 7 times 0 is 0. Negative 7 times 1 is negative 7. And negative 7 times 1 is negative 7. So now when we add those up and put our answers in a new matrix, my 0 plus 1 would be 1. 7 plus negative 7 would be 0. And negative 7 plus 1 would be negative 6. Row 2 did not change permanently, so I bring it straight down. And now if you translate this augmented matrix back into equations, notice that on this first row, you would have a 1x plus a 0y is equal to negative 6. Well, that just simply says x is negative 6. On the second row, you would have a 0x plus a 1y is equal to 1, and that would just simply say y is equal to 1. So if you go back up to the answer solutions up here, we would be saying that we've got one solution, and of course you're going to write it as an ordered pair in that box. So x would come first, and y would come second, so just like that.